What would you do if you had $1 billion?
I'll tell you what I'd do, man. 2 chicks at the same time, man.
Okay, well, maybe I can introduce you to a more classy alternative, one of which is Eleanor Thornton, aka the Spirit of Ecstasy. And then there's this, the Spirit of Ecstasy, except her darker alter ego. So stick around, because I'm about to do 2 Rolls-Royces at the same time, the Cullinan Series II and the Black Badge Cullinan Series II. I'm going to drive them around, I'm going to find out what makes them the most luxurious SUVs in the world, and also want to ask, why do they cost more than $2 million in Singapore? So if you're ready for a dose of ultra luxury, let's check these beauties out together. First, a little Cullinan history. It came out in 2018 and it was the first Rolls-Royce for anyone crazy enough to want to drive a super expensive car in mud or sand. But it was also pretty much the first family car from Rolls-Royce with all kinds of new ideas that drew new customers to the brand. The first thing you see when you see a Cullinan is a big, boxy, chunky car. Just look at the size of this thing. So let's decode that a little bit. There's a lot of emphasis on vertical lines because this is supposed to remind you of a mansion or a skyscraper. In other words, it's not actually supposed to be pretty, it's supposed to be grand and imposing and in your face. It's even in the name. Think of how the other Rolls-Royces are all about the unseen. Names like Ghost, like Phantom, like Spectre. But the Cullinan is named after the biggest diamond ever, a 3,100 carat monster, and that's just something you can't not see.
Wow.
Whatever you think of the Cullinan as an idea, this is the best-selling Rolls-Royce, and in fact last year was the car's best year ever, so even before the Series II it was still going strong. So let's try and find out what they've done to try and fix what obviously wasn't broke. Now that skyscraper idea is represented by these new daytime running lights that really emphasize the verticality of this car. I wish you could see them, but someone's locked this car, so just use your imagination for now. And of course, something that jumps out at you as soon as you see a Rolls-Royce is the Pantheon Grille. And check this out, guys. It's still made of the good stuff. There is a slight redesign and there's a new kind of chrome line that harmonizes this line with the front headlights and joins them up. But you know what? That's way too subtle. You have to wait for nighttime because that's when the real magic begins. Now there is a second styling theme and it's a nautical one. You see these lines here that form a very shallow V shape? Well, that's supposed to remind you of your super yacht sitting in the water. I mean, of course, right? That's the first thing I thought of, my super yacht, as soon as I saw these. In fact, here's a bit more nautical reference. You have a look at this high gloss black here. It reflects the tarmac, so when the Cullinan is in motion, it's supposed to create the effect of churning waters. Oh, and by the way, 23-inch wheels, the biggest ever offered on a Cullinan. But they didn't just find the biggest set they could fit and then slap them on. They actually had to change the suspension to make sure they kept the car's magic carpet ride. I just want to quickly show you these new exhaust tips at the back here. Rolls-Royce says they are an expression of power, but I really like them because number one, they are real, and number two, just listen to this. That's not plastic and it's not even chrome, it's polished stainless steel. And so is this mudguard over here. Well, we shouldn't be doing that, but you know what? That really is the authentic sound of the Rolls-Royce. And here with the Black Badge edition, well, try and guess why it's called Black Badge. You don't see chrome, you don't see stainless steel, but it is there. Like these black door handles are new for the Cullinan, and someone at the factory has to scuff them up, apply 4 layers of black paint, and then polish them to this glossy mirror-like finish. I wonder if I can see my face in here. These are plated with a dark chrome and then hand polished. And of course, the Spirit of Ecstasy, the grille, they're all in a dark smoky black because this is the dark alter ego of the Cullinan, as Rolls-Royce calls it. Oh, and one more thing, you will have noticed that the sills here are actually painted in the same color as the body, and that's just to expand the visual mass of the car. So if you choose a bright color, well, look at this one. I mean, if you saw this on the street, you might think a fire engine was bearing down on you, which is great if you really want people to see you coming. So Black Badge is all about the alter ego, but I think it's also quite good for the regular ego. And you know what? All this stuff really works because thanks to things like Black Badge, the young and rich are more interested in Rolls-Royce than ever. In 2010, the average age of the customer was 56, and now it's 43. Well, I guess I should have done more with my life, or maybe studied a little bit harder in school, because if I had, then maybe this is what I would see every time I drove to work. So let me just fire up the engine here and see what I get. Now this is new, and I want to show you that it's now pillar to pillar glass, and you have a new digital display over here, and you can actually customize the background color. There's a new operating system for the central touchscreen. But what's most interesting is actually over there. The illuminated fascia actually has a cityscape pattern, and that goes back to the kind of urban environment that the Cullinan inhabits. That isn't just a backlit panel though, so it's security glass, and this being Rolls-Royce, there are actually 7,000 dots that go into making up this pattern. You probably noticed this though. They call it the clock cabinet. Wonder why? And there is a Spirit of Ecstasy mini sculpture. It's actually a metallic piece, so it's cast metal and then coated in the dark chrome for the black badge. It would be silver chrome for the other car. Apparently it was a pain to light up from below. Sometimes the light would catch on her knees or her face or whatever, so they've actually worked really hard on getting it lit just so. It's a nice little touch, and why did they do it? Well, apparently Rolls-Royce customers just wanted something a little bit analog to look at day in, day out, and escape from the digital world. And I think it was the right decision. So this upholstery is new to the Cullinan, and there's actually an interesting story behind it. Back in the 1920s, Sir Henry Royce had a holiday villa in the French Riviera, and from his house you could see something kind of green. It was a bamboo grove in some Mediterranean gardens.
Oh, how lovely.
So fast forward today, and some Rolls-Royce designers go to the French Riviera for research purposes, and they see the same bamboo, and they get inspired and they make a new material out of that bamboo, and this is what it is. It's called Duality Twill. It is actually quite a lovely textile, and there is a nautical theme. I don't know if you've noticed this embroidery pattern, but some of these are supposed to remind you of the ropes that you see on a ship, and there's apparently a stylized RR. You have to stare very hard to see it. And this being Rolls-Royce, it's super fancy because there's something like 2.2 million stitches and something like 11 miles of thread, and you can sew a lot of buttons with that. If you don't like textile, if you're a leather kind of guy, well, you still have the option of that, of course, and you have something new to toy with, and that's something called placed perforation. So I don't know if you can see this, but this upholstery actually has something like 107,000 little perforations, and they come in various sizes to create sort of patterns. And believe it or not, one guy at the factory actually has to check every perforation. So what can you do with it? Well, whatever you like actually. If you want to put your cat's face here, or I don't know, maybe I would put a dollar sign because I have no imagination, but if you can see this, this is actually apparently the cloud pattern above Goodwood, where Rolls-Royce cars are from. So it's actually created a very relaxing atmosphere back here. I mean, who doesn't like to lie down and look at clouds, right? Okay, I am 1.75 meters tall, and as you can see, I am not lacking room in any way at all. There's a lot of leg room, and there's actually never been a request for an extended wheelbase version of the Cullinan, and that's because, first of all, I think most drivers want to do the driving themselves when it comes to this car. Second of all, it really is big enough. And if you're wondering why no 7-seat version, well, that's another one of those things where the drivers just haven't asked for it. And personally, I don't think it would be very Rolls-Royce to like cram 7 people into a car like a bus. This is much nicer. So I tell you what, I've never actually been in a Cullinan before, but it does feel like a Rolls-Royce. I've got all the space I could ever want. There is that air of quality, and if it looks like metal, it is metal, and it sounds like metal, so that's again the authentic sound of a Rolls-Royce. They promise you a magic carpet ride in this car, and you can of course feel the bumps underneath you. You are a little bit higher up off the ground than in the other Rolls-Royces, so you do get rocked around a little bit more. But okay, magic carpet might be overselling it a little bit, but I think I've never been more comfortable in the back of an SUV, quite frankly. Oh, and I'm sure you've noticed this is a 5-seat car. Many Rolls-Royces are 4-seaters, of course, and you can have the Cullinan with 4 seats, which is more luxurious, but this really is the family Rolls-Royce. So if you are the kind of guy that likes to bring your kids along with you in the back of your Rolls-Royce, well, the Cullinan is the one for you. Okay, finally some time behind the wheel, and here I am driving the Black Badge Edition. which is actually slightly different from a regular Cullinan. How so? Well, it's got a bit more power. So this has 600 horsepower and 900 Newton meters of peak torque, whereas a regular Cullinan has 571 horsepower, 850 Newton meters. They both have that majestic 6.75 litre V12 engine. There are some differences in terms of the transmission though. I think the Black Badge has a slightly more aggressive shifting gearbox. So it does have a slightly different character, and I feel like the steering is heavier and the suspension is a wee bit firmer. But there's not a lot of performance difference actually. This car gets from 0 to 100 in 5.2 seconds, and then the regular Cullinan takes 5.3 seconds. So I think it's a matter of character and how you want your Rolls-Royce to feel. Now, the V12 is actually carried over pretty much unchanged from the last Cullinan, and I think there's a good reason for that. Probably the customers just didn't ask for more power, and keep in mind all these customers have a whole garage of cars, right? They can choose whatever they want to drive, and I don't think any of them has ever complained that their Cullinans need to be faster. And I know this because Rolls-Royce is one of those companies that's almost like a family. You know, last year there was a new CEO, Chris Brownridge, and when he joined the company, apparently a lot of customers sent him notes to say, "Welcome to Rolls-Royce." So can you imagine that? And if they wanted more power, they would have known who to ask for more power. But you know what? Let's see what a V12 feels like. That's just such a nice surge of power. And you know, they say effortless power in this car, and yeah, it's pretty much the case. But I have to admit, I think an electric motor would be quieter, may even be smoother, and actually it'd be more responsive. But there's something about a V12, I think. It's something romantic, and you know, it used to stand for the pinnacle of motoring and pinnacle of engines, right? So this really is, I think, one of the rare cars that still offers a V12. I mean, you usually have to go to Ferrari or maybe Lamborghini, and I think that maybe some people would prefer the Rolls-Royce with electric power, but I think I would still relish the chance to have a V12 while I still can. And that is actually super relevant to the Cullinan, because apparently something like 90% of the customers drive themselves, and when it comes to Black Badge, that goes up to something like 98%. So I can see why. The engine is lovely and creamy, and this is not a difficult car to drive. I mean, the controls are light, the view out of the car is great, and even though it's a big car, it doesn't feel unwieldy or clumsy. It's actually quite easy to place. So overall, I think I could totally live with this car day after day, day in, day out. And in fact, I'm having such a nice time driving this car that I never feel like using all the power. I just want to sit back, relax, and actually try to make the journey go longer. So that's the Cullinan in a nutshell. It's a big car, but it's delicate to drive like all Rolls-Royces. It still looks majestic, and the new upholstery options invoke Sir Henry Royce and good wood because, well, who else can do it? And that's what it means to be Rolls-Royce. So now you know everything there is to know about the Cullinan Series II, but there is one question left which only you can answer for yourself, and that is this worth the more than 2 million Singapore dollars it would cost to take one home with you? I guess it's tempting to say I would rather have a 911 and a 7 Series and an Alphard with a chauffeur, but you know what? Rolls-Royce customers don't really have to make that choice. So it all boils down to that question I asked at the beginning. What would you do if you had $1 billion? I know I would. And hey, I might even do 2 at the same time. Hey, I hope you enjoyed watching that. If you did, please consider subscribing. And if you want to find out more about any car in Singapore, WhatsApp me at this link over here, and I'll try my best to help you out. I'll even hook you up with a test drive if I can, and I'll do it for free. Thanks for watching. See you again.